2, 3, 4.
Welcome to Off Panel, Sketch.com's weekly podcast. This week's show is the last episode recorded at Emerald City ComiCon, as I sat down with Brenden Fletcher and Karl Kerschl, the team behind the upcoming Image comics title Isola, to talk their new book and creative partnership. So the reason why you two gentlemen, Brenden Fletcher, Karl Kerschl, are here is that, I mean, you guys have known each other since, per your speech at Image Expo, since you were 10, right?
10 years old. Yeah, you're half a year older than me.
Yeah.
But it was grade 6.
So you were still 9, probably.
I might have, maybe I was still 9. I might have been close to, and I think I was 10.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, 10 years old, grade 6.
So I'm 32, and, I'm not that I'm casting aspersions or anything like that, but I'm a little closer to 10 than you guys are. And I don't have friends from when I was 10, which is amazing that you guys not only, have that relationship still going, but you guys are working together, like successfully. And I'm curious, like, what is it about like each other that makes it, like, both personally and in a work capacity, like a relationship that you enjoy? What makes it working together such a joy for the two of you?
I think it's partially the shorthand, right?
The shorthand is a result of knowing each other forever.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a big question. I don't think we've ever really talked about it.
We have a lot of, we have a very similar taste in other media. We like the same movies. We like the same comics for the most part.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
back in grade 6 and 7, because it was really only 2 years. We went to school together, and then you left to go to a different school. Yeah,
That school was not for me.
Yeah. We bonded over probably Star Wars first, and then G.I. Joe stuff, and then Voltron in a big way.
Oh, yeah.
And then most importantly, Robotech. And
Oh, yeah.
Macross.
Macross.
Yeah, and so we would spend our recess times and lunch hours drawing. We'd take chalk from the classroom, and we'd kind of group a couple of other friends together who could kind of draw, and we'd draw giant Voltron pictures in chalk on the tarmac that
Oh my
other
God,
kids,
that is
that
awesome.
other non-nerds would just delight in destroying as soon
So
as we drew them.
we'd split up the Voltron body, like I would take one arm and Karl would take the other. And then I would always make Karl draw the face because you were the only one who could nail the shape of those eyes.
Voltron had a really good face. I was also a Red Lion guy.
Yeah.
I really liked the Red Lion.
Was
So
that
I
the
got stuck with Pidge's robot. Thanks.
No, Heil got stuck with Pidge.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Was that the moment you guys realized that Brenden would be the writer and Karl would be the artist with
No,
Voltron's face?
he won't tell you this, but he used to draw all the time, and he's really good, and he stopped doing it.
Oh.
He drew comics for the Brock Press, the school newspaper. Yeah. You want to defend yourself?
No, I'm not going to defend myself. It was just when we finally got old enough that we wanted to make comics professionally, and it became something that we could do. I thought we had to make a decision that one of us would be the artist and one of us would be the writer. And I always just felt like I was trying to keep up with Karl. And around that time, he started to take off.
Mm-hmm.
Like your art just got like exponentially better over those years because you were really pushing yourself. And there was no way I could keep up. So it was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to have to be the one to figure out how to write stuff then. And we started actually almost immediately putting a project together that we worked on for the next 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, that was 90. Well, I started in earnest trying to hone my skills and focus on a career in comics probably around 1991, maybe 91, 92 anyway. 92 was when we went to our first comic convention. My dad drove us to Chicago ComiCon, and it was the year that Image was formed, and they had the tent.
Oh,
there.
wow.
And it was the first time I took samples to anything, and my samples were like 3 pages of poorly drawn X-Men comics that were. I just really wanted to be Jim Lee. That's all I wanted. So I was like really into all the Jim Lee comics at the time, and then the Image stuff that was coming out.
Let me just say that when I was back at my parents' house over Christmas this year, I actually found photocopies of those pages that you took in
That's so exciting. That's great.
Big 11 by 17s.
Do you want to
and
run that with this
I
podcast?
thought about snapping pictures of them with my phone. I was going to tweet one out, and then I thought, oh my God, Karl would be mortified. Yeah,
I looked for them actually at my parents' place. My closets in my room are full of like boxes of old stuff. I'm sure they're in there, but I couldn't get at them. I didn't dig through everything. I did find some other really awful stuff.
I also found a Wildcats pinup that you did
Oh,
that I
yeah.
had totally forgotten about.
That Wildcats pinup was done for Jim because, well, not. I mean, that's not quite true. What happened was, I don't know if you remember, in the back of Wildcats 2, there was a talent search,
Oh, yeah.
and I sent stuff to them, and then I guess they liked the samples I sent or thought there was some kind of promise there, and they requested a Wildcats pinup,
Wow.
which I did. So I sent it to them, and then never got the gig or the call to go. But it was a time. It was that time when like guys like J. Scott Campbell and those dudes all went out to San Diego, La Jolla, or wherever they were based. So that was hugely disappointing.
I have to ask because I was all about comics at that period in my life already, and I'm curious. Did you ever submit something for the Wizard envelope thing?
I did.
Oh.
No, not the envelope one. I sent one. They had those kind of pinup galleries of fan art. I did a Psylocke
Nice.
back then. We were still in high school.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I drew that and I sent it in. I don't think it ever got used.
I also wanted to be a comic artist when I was a kid, and I would spend all of my time like drawing and drawing and drawing. Never improved. I actually took a class. I was like studying Marvel, draw the Marvel way and everything like that. It never worked out, so I went writing too. It was the right choice to make. Sounds like Brenden was better than me though.
No, I spent a lot of time drawing and painting in high school. Remember when I really got into watercolors? And I just I got my art teacher in my last year of high school to allow me to do whatever project. He said, if you want to commit to doing a single project that is great in scope, I'll let you do that other than the rest of the stuff. Because he knew I just wanted to do comics. So he let me make a fully
That's awesome.
painted comic. And do you remember this?
I won't know. I probably saw it, but I don't remember anything
God,
about
it's
it.
so horrible. You're going to die. This is probably the most embarrassing thing you're going to get out of me. Dude.
I'm loving it.
It is a Venom comic.
Oh yeah.
What?
A fully painted Venom comic?
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
I
melancholy Venom.
Oh, God. If anyone could do melancholy Venom. There's a pitch right there.
Marvel and DC, give me any character and I will make him or her sad or melancholy. I can do it.
I feel like I have kind of like dreamlike memories of this. Like, wasn't there a lot of drippy black stuff?
Oh yeah, you know it. It was very inspired by Bill Sienkiewicz and Baron's story. So there's all sorts of weird captions painted straight into the art. The symbiote was saying a lot of stuff to Eddie Brock. On the
Why
beach.
Venom? How did that?
I don't know. I never even liked Venom. I think it was just easy to paint.
You like blacks a lot of the
I
time,
think
so it
that
worked
was
with it.
You could do a lot of swirly black design stuff. It was really bad.
That's amazing.
I didn't want to say anything, but I actually found those pages at my parents'.
Yes.
The originals?
Oh yeah, the original watercolor pages.
That's going to be a future feature on Sketched.
I got an A+. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, it
whatever.
worked out. So I know you guys did the Wednesday Comics Flash comic together, and then you guys did Gotham Academy. Did you guys make comics together when you were kids? Like, were you guys putting together your own comics?
We didn't really make comics when we were
think
kids.
so.
It wasn't until late high school that, when we really got into comics as a big way and started thinking about it in terms of
Like
career.
storytelling and everything?
Yeah, that we spent more time making up stories and, more importantly, just studying the craft of storytelling. I remember spending a lot of time just breaking down, analyzing films and stories and myths, and just learning how that stuff worked, and then building stories based on those skeletons.
But you know what we did do? Like I think we just weren't thinking of these things as professions, and we weren't being that specific with it. But we were coming up with stories based on these characters for all the role playing games. Like we were storytelling. We were.
It was just
we
in
were
a different form.
Yeah, we were making up like new GI Joe characters. Remember that? Like I
Yeah,
spent
that
all
was
this
grade
time.
7.
I thought that was grade 6.
Well, okay.
I still have all these drawings of all the different kinds of vipers that
Yeah.
we could make up, and they each had their own stories, their specific characters. We just weren't doing like long form.
Sure.
Yeah.
You guys were doing like the kid comic stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were kids. Come on.
I mean, I believe me, I actually thought about running a feature on Sketch that was my own X-Men comic that I wrote and drew when I was a kid.
I'm into it.
No, you would not be into it. You would look at it, you're like, I was into it theoretically, and then I read it, and this is garbage. This is horrible. But so you guys have been developing Isola for a while. I pronounced that right, correct?
Isola.
Isola. Oh my God.
No, it's okay.
I'm a monster. I'm sorry. So Isola, you guys have been developing it for a while. What was like? Obviously, you guys have been working together a lot. You guys have your shorthand. What was the development process for that book? I know it's been something that's kind of been gestating for a while, right?
I mean, it is in a lot of ways born of other projects.
Mhm.
And there was one that Karl and I had been working on for the better part of a decade. And we had a deal with Image Comics, and we were preparing to release it, and things just didn't go the way we needed it to, and we both had to take other work, and it didn't happen. A lot of people have prints that we had made from it, and I think we did T-shirts too. And
Yeah,
all
we
sorts
had
of stuff.
T-shirts and prints and a short story sample that we gave to people at shows. It was a huge learning experience. It was in many ways, but I think most importantly in that I think we figured out how to craft story by doing that. But we made the rookie mistake of trying to create something that was way too big, just like a massive epic thing, which is the kind of thing you never actually get around to doing. So I produced a lot of art for it, a lot. Like there was a lot of design work. There was, I don't know, the better part of an issue. There's probably like 40 pages of comic
Wow.
work.
there is a lot of artwork. I mean, this was over years and years, and you can see it evolve as well from where because it started as kind of a zombie story before zombies were a thing. Do you
big
remember
thing.
this?
Yeah, what happened was we pitched. We were kind of going to shows and trying to put together a zombie anthology. Before anyone was doing any zombie anything, and then that turned into the kind of kernel of this Miki idea, and then that turned into something that was way more influenced by like a completely different kind of storytelling.
Let me just say, one of the people we spoke to early on, do you remember this? Was Harlan Ellison.
Oh wow.
Did we?
Yeah,
Well,
at
we had some balls on us.
seriously, Motor
Seriously.
City ComiCon. Like, I think I was probably peeing myself when I talked to him.
He
And
seems
was-
intimidating.
Yes, but he was the nicest man.
Really?
And he gave us his only zombie story. Gave
Wow.
us a green light to adapt it or do whatever. with it.
Wow.
But what he said, it's not much of a story. It's more of just a few sentences. But that's what we were doing. We were like recruiting people to participate in an anthology of zombie stories.
I love that you guys went to Harlan Ellison for that. That
I
is
know.
amazing.
Shoot
I
for the
know.
moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you guys like work together, you're putting this project together and everything now, and and you've been working on it in some capacity for a long time now. Do you guys have like segmented roles, or I mean, obviously, you're doing the art, you're going to be doing the writing, but at the same time,
hanging out.
but I mean, is there like how much does that merge? Like, do you talk out the art? Do you talk out the writing? Do you guys all kind of just weave everything together because you guys have been working together for so long?
Yeah, it's it's really hard to delineate the responsibilities,
Right.
Other than the actual sitting down and drawing of it, which I'm doing. But
Brendan's not sitting behind you and being like, oh, what
sometimes
about
it feels
this?
like it. Well, I send him stuff. I send him pages as I finish them, or if I'm running into problems with how to play out a scene, I'll send him the page or the sketches and ask for advice, and it's always really insightful. But conceptually and structurally, like it's just a lot of us sitting around talking
Right.
and batting ideas around and figuring out what we want it to be and what we like, and it's just this sort of gradual evolution of a story and characters. And then the writing of it, I mean, we're co-writing it, but the writing of it is really just not much more than that. Like
Right.
we talk about we talk about all that stuff and then figure out kind of how that breaks down into issues or beats, and then that's sort of it. I mean, then we'll do like a very loose page by page kind of thing, and by page, I mean it'll say page 1 with like a point form note, and then page 2 with another little note, and because I'm already in it, I'm already immersed and I know what it's supposed to be. I might make a couple of notes for myself, but they're also cryptic, and then I'll just start drawing it.
Yeah,
And
we don't write a lot, but we talk through the beats of every page so that Karl already has like an understanding of what needs to go on the page.
Right.
Sometimes that changes while he's drawing it. So he'll like send me a layout of a page and say, hey, I added this. I felt like it needed this extra beat in between those 2 moments we talked about. And he's, 99% of the time bang on the money. But you always find that even when doing full script for like a DC project, I find that as I'm writing, a scene is going to require an additional beat than I had originally planned. And so this page that already felt a bit crowded with 7 panels is going to need an 8th panel. And I usually write a little apology. Like, I'm so sorry. Unless it's like Cameron, who delights in cramming 20 some odd panels on a page. But yeah, like I kind of know how Karl's pages are going to go without having to dictate how I feel about it. I know he's going to aim for 5, 6 panels, maybe 7 tops. And we know how those beats are going to spread out. And I don't know, we just never feel the need to really waste a whole lot of time putting it all down in words.
it's just inefficient,
Right.
really. I mean, like it's like even when we're talking about it,
Right.
we cut ourselves off because it's just inefficient to blab on about an idea that we both already get.
Right.
Like we'll stop each other and just say, okay, I got it.
It was the same points of reference.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and that's the nice thing is because like you guys do have that shorthand, but you've also been developing it, and like you guys have been immersed in this project for longer than we even like well before we even knew about it and everything.
Well, this particular project is only a little older than Gotham Academy. It was it was born of Karl feeling the end of the abominable Charles Christopher drawing near.
I haven't heard of that comic. What is that?
Well, David, it's called The Abominable Charles Christopher. There is some merchandise and several books out there. You should get them.
Oh, okay. Maybe my mom will pick them up for Christmas or something. Anyways, the roots were in in Charles Christopher.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about this quite often, how he had developed 2 separate audiences. There was the webcomic audience who were really enjoying reading this, quiet, thoughtful story of a lumbering oaf and a bunch of animals in the forest weekly on the internet. And then there were the other people who read his superhero comics for DC and Marvel.
Right.
And there wasn't a whole ton of crossover whenever Karl would post any. I'm telling your story here, but sorry. But whenever he would post
love it.
DC stuff on the Charles Christopher, people would freak out and go, "Oh my God, I bought that book. I didn't know you were the guy who did that." And
Or
So it's
just
like a-
not care.
Yeah,
I mean,
or
It was
not
like a
care.
disconnect there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as Charles Christopher was drawing to it, or he was feeling it draw to its end, he said, I want to do something that would ideally bring those 2 audiences together. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do after that. How do I keep Charles Christopher alive in a way? How do I do a project for DC or Marvel that's going to have like animals in it that that audience is going to care about? So I went to the gym and got on the treadmill, and it actually hit me this story hit me like a flash, and I immediately went to the comic studio, pitched it to Karl, and we were on. It was pretty quick.
I think it's really funny. A lot of my best ideas come when I'm on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And then you have this like split-second moment where you're like, do I get off the treadmill and like email myself immediately, or do I keep running and hope I keep it in my head?
Yeah.
Did you get off immediately?
No, I didn't. I just kept thinking about it. I just kept thinking the story beats through.
And it was just like developing as you were doing that?
That's it, yeah.
That's awesome.
And so much, you probably find this too, Karl, but so much of the time when that stuff works really well, it's because I've had the right piece of music playing. And
Oh yeah, for me it's
Yeah.
all music.
Really?
It's a lot of like a lot of film scores and stuff like that. That is for me the most direct route to creativity and visual inspiration.
I listen to film scores all the time when I'm working. They're like my fuel, basically. But I'm curious, like, so you're saying about how important music is. Like, what were what would the soundtrack or score to your guys' development so far be?
Well, it's obviously everything that Joe Hisaishi's ever composed for Ghibli movies. But I actually remember what I was listening to on the treadmill, and it was Austin Wintory's Journey soundtrack.
Yeah. I've listened to that Journey soundtrack a lot.
The video game?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a good soundtrack. It's really good.
And it was just because it was on my phone. It wasn't, I didn't hunt for the perfect soundtrack to come up with this idea. It was, oh my God, what have I got on here that I can listen to that kind of feels like Charles Christopher to me? And that's basically, what have I got that kind of feels like Joe Hisaishi's Ghibli scores?
Charles Christopher is mostly based on a lot of Sigur Rós music.
That's like the one soundtrack or score thing I can listen to while I write, because, it's either in Icelandic or Hopelandic. So it's, you don't think about the lyrics unless you speak Icelandic or Hopelandic, in which case you probably would be thinking about it. But I have a very convoluted question I want to ask you guys. So you guys have talked about how, Ghibli is an influence on the book, and it's in some ways a continuation of, Abominable Charles Christopher. And one thing that stands out as a parallel between all three of those is, you have Rook and you have Olwen, and Olwen's been transformed into a tiger, and Rook's like, protecting her and everything like that. And they're going on this journey to Isola to, find her now deceased brother, correct?
That's right.
So
well done.
There's one of the commonality between those three things is there's like a tangible connection between, and like there's a tangible connection and struggle between the natural world and like the developed world. And I you look at you look at Princess Mononoke, and it's really like, Miyazaki's like statement about like environmentalism and how we're destroying the planet and things like that. I'm curious, like, what interests you about the relationship between like those two worlds? Like, I may have just presupposed that you guys have this interest, but it does seem like, like that developed society, where Olwen and Rook come from, but then now Olwen's a beast, like she's a tiger, and like, what interests you about that connection? So that's way too deep.
A lot of that is me. I mean, I think I never set out to do that or explore those themes or even be preachy about it. But for some reason, Charles Christopher is very much a stream of consciousness kind of effort. Like, I don't ever think about it. I don't plan anything. I just kind of start. I came up with the idea for the character, and then I just started drawing just to see where it went. It was never meant to be a story, even. It was just meant to be slice of life stuff.
It was a little sillier.
It was silly. It's still really silly. It's mostly pretty silly. Like, but that character is silly.
But then you get into the narrative though, and it like there's like the city and like the ruler who's
yeah. Well, what I mean is like that stuff sort of just unfolded in front of me. It just ended up. That's where I kind of realized that that's clearly the stuff I'm interested in. And it's not. And for me, it was never about, either or. It was never about taking sides. It was always about a harmony between those two things, between the natural world and the developed world. And when we were talking about Isola, it was I don't remember how it came up. I think I just felt like I wanted to explore that stuff just because it feels personal. It just feels important to me, and that's where my head and heart kind of go when I'm not trying to structure something. I've always been. I think we probably both have always been less interested in telling like a story, like a plot-based ABC story, than we have been in just creating a lot of mood and atmosphere. And I don't know. I don't know how this is going to, because with Charles Christopher, it was just me doing it alone. And with this, it's something that we've both created, but still demands a certain amount of spontaneity or
sure.
It's kind of like, I don't want to say improvised, but it feels like we're following whims and paying less attention to what is considered correct in terms of crafting
You're going
story.
where the book takes you guys as
Yeah.
creators. I mean, it's not like you're gonna have Moon Bear interludes or something like that.
No, but I mean, who knows?
might.
Maybe.
I don't know.
That was never planned
Right.
in the webcomic either. It was something that I liked the idea of and wanted to explore and felt like it fit. And I think the way we work is if something, especially for this project, if it feels right, if it feels emotionally right, it'll go in there. And it doesn't really matter if it makes any logical sense.
Brenden, when he was talking about the structure part and about how you don't want to necessarily, like, not that you guys are avoiding structure, but you guys, like, you don't want to be locked in by it. Your eyes widen. For people who weren't here, they you know.
It's just it's such a golden opportunity to finally get back to storytelling that is more emotionally resonant for us, I think. It's hard to stick within the corporate end of the comics medium and be relegated to exactly 20 pages a month, and they must come out every month, and they must feel kind of complete in and of themselves and deliver a full entertainment experience with an A and a B plot, and the A plot should continue into the next issue, and sometimes there's a C plot. Something's got to wrap up by the end. There's a first, second, and third act in the comic that is contributing to a larger first, second, and third act.
Right.
There's so much to juggle in and around that. Also having to be conscious of what's going on in a shared universe and what an editorial group is directing you to do. It's a lot. What we're doing here is very pure, I guess,
Right.
in relation to that. Not to say that one is better than the other or one is right and one is wrong, but this is I don't want anyone to think that we don't have a story.
Right.
We very clearly are pointing at what the end is for our story. But because we have a very definitive end, we've got this great space in the middle that we get to play. And we've got a bunch of pieces developed, and we know the order that we're going to explore them in.
But you can, like, kind of meander within
Exactly.
there and explore the parts that are interesting to you guys.
We don't know exactly how long we're going to keep exploring something. We're going to explore it until it's done, until it doesn't make sense to explore it anymore. And in that way, it's kind of like what Karl was able to do with Charles Christopher. He could spend as many weeks on his strip on one point as he wanted to. The story point can be as important and take as long as it wants to be on the page.
Yeah, those themes, those nature versus development themes, like that's, I think it's all subtext in this case. It's never something I've felt conscious of doing, and in fact, it's the stuff that Princess Mononoke is not by a long shot my favorite Miyazaki film.
Nor mine.
It just happens to be, those themes are in there, but I don't think that's the stuff in that film that was influencing or inspiring
No,
us.
but look, like we do have these themes in Isola now, but that was not the intention, and it wasn't there at the beginning. It
It's
was
an aspect.
Yeah, it was the story that you kind of laid out, David, the kind of prologue setup, the inciting incident. That's what it was. And when we started to develop it, we didn't start with theme, but it quickly became evident just by the fact that a woman has been turned into a tiger, that there were elements of that. And as we started to dig in, they started to become more and more important, more relevant. And of course, Karl got really excited about it and started coming up with more ideas based on that. And it's become even more wonderful the deeper down that hole we go.
So I'm curious, like, previously, obviously, you guys both worked at, DC most recently. What made Image the right home for this book? And then beyond that, like, when I was listening to you guys' pitch, or when you guys were talking at Image Expo, I don't even know what you would call that, like the revelation of the book, I was expecting it to be a graphic novel. But I'm curious, like, what made you guys want to do this story as a monthly series?
It took some, I think when we first started talking about it, I also imagined it as a graphic novel, or at least something that was more limited in scope, something like that had a very specific beginning and ending that we could get through. Just like laser focus on these characters
Sure.
and tell that story and not let it sprawl.
Because we immediately, after I pitched it to Karl and we started talking about the story, we immediately started talking about how it ends. We know this ending so
Right.
well, and we're really excited to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like a self-contained thing. It felt like we can do this as an OGN or 6 issues or something.
But did like the monthly format kind of allow you guys more space to kind of do that like the exploration of the world? Like,
Yeah, I mean, there were discussions with Image about this that are kind of relevant, but I feel like you should talk about it first, Karl. Like, how did you go from feeling OGN to series?
Oh, I think I kind of got talked into it. I mean, because
I'm sorry.
no, but no, in I think the result is positive. But I guess I was afraid of taking on something that would be just overly long for no really good reason.
Sure.
Like of dragging something out just for the sake of marketing. You know, that's what.
Also, the Miki fear, the fact that the last time we did this, it was planned to be 3 huge projects.
Yeah,
that interlocked.
the bigger it is, the more intimidating it is.
Right.
But then, yeah, you kind of just talked me into it by, I guess, just talking about how, like, obviously it's a story but a journey, and the journey is the thing. And the more we talked about the world and the surrounding elements, the things that these characters have to deal with, and the people and the, like, even political factions, then the more it made sense to just really just not limit ourselves, just to explore that stuff, because the end of that story is not going to mean very much if nothing has happened to these characters.
Right.
You know. So and also like an OGN of I don't know what's a standard page count for that, like
200.
a couple hundred
yeah.
a couple hundred pages on the high end, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that feels like, I don't know. It felt like the ending warranted more meat
Sure.
in the middle, and so now I'm totally behind that idea. I'm really excited about it.
So when we sat down with Image the first time to pitch it, there were several people from the company in the room, and they were divided about
Interesting.
how best it should be, because it immediately feels, as you say, like a great OGN. But I also felt that there were people who could see that it could be a great serial story, and I think at that point it became a discussion.
Right.
And we could have gone either way with it, but we had a device in mind at this point. I think that lets it, or no, it came afterwards. I think that the device,
The Genesis device.
the Genesis device.
That sounds
Okay,
like
now-
such a comic book idea. It's unbelievable.
No,
the
it's
Genesis
Star
device.
Trek.
We're Star Trek nerds.
Oh, okay.
All the way. Yeah, we came up with the concept. We would just say it now, right? I mean, David could edit it out if we.
If you guys want me to cut it, I can totally do that.
It's every issue is going to have a prologue that is the story setup, and that frees us to do whatever we want within the confines of the issue, because you
Oh.
understand the context of the journey. So therefore, every issue doesn't have to speak directly to.
It doesn't have to be story.
Yeah,
story.
well, we were trying to figure out a way to just get into this thing without, because we didn't want to deal with flashbacks
Right.
ever, if we could help it, and we didn't want to waste a ton of time going through this setup, which is basically the pitch for the whole series. So we decided to do it in one synopsis page that every issue will start with, and then we just get right into it. Like, here's the setup. This is what happened. You all know what happened. Now we're just in the forest.
Well,
That's it.
I think that's like really necessary, especially like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a probably on the low end of like a hardcore comic reader, and like I pick up like, I don't know, 4 to 8 titles a week or something like that. And so when you're reading like a 20-page comic, you can like completely be lost in the story when you pick it up even like the next month. Or if you guys are following like the saga schedule, like you have like a 3-month or 4-month gap in between like the 5th issue and the first issue, the second arc or whatever. And so like I think that type of stuff is going to be essential to like.
Yeah, well, I think it's unusual for a first issue.
Oh, it totally is.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that's where I think we both got really excited about it.
Oh wait. Oh.
There's no, like, it starts with that. We just get right into it. Like, here's the setup, 1 page, and now we're on the journey.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is really great.
And there's, there will always be opportunities for us if we want to go back and explore that part of the story, the setup in more detail if we think it warrants it. But we're not as interested in dragging that out as much as we are just getting to the journey, because that's the really important thing for me, and I think for you too probably, is exploring the relationship between these two women and the circumstances that we find them now. As things have changed and as they're able to reevaluate how they relate to one another, now that their relative stations don't matter as much anymore.
Right. I mean, Rook's still like the protector to the degree a tiger needs a protector.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I mean, it seems like a lot of the narrative is going to be dependent on Rook being a character we really connect with, because like she's going to be the only one. I mean, I guess I don't know if Olwen will be able to speak in tiger form, but Rook will be like kind of the voice we hear, and like the person's perspective, and not that it's going to be a POV book or something like that, but like the perspective that we have to reflect the most on. And I think it's going to be really interesting. Like, so how have you guys been developing those characters? Do they like change a lot from when you first came up with them, or like, I don't know.
I think we generally have, again, this is so much gut.
I know.
We work with our guts so much, and I think we both had a feeling of who these people were, and my feeling of both of them has not changed since day one, I think.
Since that treadmill?
Yeah, since the treadmill.
Since that fateful treadmill day. It's we both have an instinctive notion of who those characters are, and it's I think the interesting part is, I mean, we talked about starting it with the kind of origin story, but we just kept groaning through it. We're like, oh god, like this is just slow, and
it was a grind. I didn't want to write it. You don't want to draw it,
and so this seems like the best move, and I really like the idea of, I mean, Rook is so, both of those characters are complex in that they're both really fixated on a specific duty or a perception of who they're supposed to be, whether it's ruling a kingdom or whether it's protecting a queen, and seeing the cracks in those facades and seeing them kind of shift is the most interesting part, and we pretty much hit the ground running with that.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about like leading with like the prologue is I like that you guys assume that the reader is smart enough to handle it, because like you look at, not to take a jab at a recent movie or something like that, but we know how Batman's parents died. We don't need to know things like that, and like if you guys are trusting readers to be able to pick up on what's going on, so you guys can get to the part that is meaningful to you and where you guys can really dig in and tell your story and everything. And I think, I don't know, I'm not saying that other comics don't do things like that, but I do appreciate that you guys are trusting readers to handle something like that.
Thank you. I hope that it works. I feel like it's a little experimental. I mean, the fact that we're planning to begin every issue with that prologue, maybe that's going to be a device that wears on people after 10 comics. But for me, I feel like it's freeing. It lets us do whatever we want within the confines of the pages that we're allotting ourselves for the story, because we can start anywhere, and any issue can be the first issue that you pick up, because you'll even, I don't know how we're going to handle, like, this is the story so far to cover the previous issues, but hopefully you can pick up an issue, read that prologue, understand the setup, and you're off and running, and you get enough out of the following pages to entertain you.
Well, one of the things that Eric said when we were talking to him about the story and how it was kind of structured was that it's not enough for the hook of your of your story, of your series, to be the hook that you end your first issue with. There should be, there's a hook that brings people in to read the book, and then there should be a hook that no one's expecting at the end of it. So it was kind of, we just wanted to take the initial hook, which is the pitch of the whole thing, and get it out of the way quickly, so that you have no idea what to expect once the actual story starts.
Yeah, we'll likely publish that. sometime in the next number of months.
Yeah.
And get it out there. It should be out there. Everybody should understand what they're getting into.
I think, is it kind of cool for the both of you? I mean, obviously, doing Charles Christopher, you could do whatever the hell you wanted. But I mean, like, is it kind of cool being able to, like, really dig into, like, all these different ways you can tell a story? And, like, I mean, like you were saying, you don't know how you're going to do the story so far stuff, but you can try to find new and fun ways to be able to tell those stories to really, like, connect readers with the book. And is that freeing as creators to have, like, that kind of utter freedom, I guess?
I love the flexibility, and that's not to say that
you didn't before.
Yeah, it's not. We work with some of the most incredible people at DC who fight the good fight to do new experimental things, to try new things. I mean, Gotham Academy is a perfect example of that. Right down to the fact that Mark Chiarello was all for us using the symbol as the logo for the book, but it just didn't work out. But not that they wouldn't allow us to try things. There are some weird limitations that seem random that they put in place. There are things that they will not allow us to do at DC because Marvel does it, and I'm sure it's the same thing. And all that stuff is infuriating, and that's stuff that we don't have to deal with here. So yes, there's more flexibility, there's more freedom. Sometimes that's a challenge, though, because the world is our oyster. We can almost do anything, and sometimes it's easier to work within limitations. So there's a positive and negative to it, but I think ultimately what it provides us is the opportunity to create something that we can, at the end of the day, say that we are 100% proud of and that we 100% stand behind because we did it all. Every decision was ours.
So, sorry, Brenden, I'm going to have to ask one quick question about Karl's art in specific. So
no, go for it. Please.
In the write-up about the book and also on stage, you guys talked about how visually speaking, it's like Miyazaki, Ghibli, and the video game Dark Souls.
Here we go.
All right. Thanks for having me on, David.
We're two of the biggest influences. But, I never played Dark Souls, so I may not be going the direction you think I am. But what made those so influential to you visually? I mean, like, what made that a good fit for Isola?
Well, the Ghibli stuff, I think, is probably self-explanatory.
Right.
It's a lot of vistas and a lot of kind of fantastical environments. And the cool part about the Ghibli stuff, like Miyazaki's films in particular, is that I noticed that he can take a traditional countryside or traditional forest setting and make it fantastic by showing it from the perspective of a child. So for example, like the tree in Totoro is impossibly huge because it's a bunch of kids looking at it, or even the forests in Mononoke. Like everything is skewed to be a little more like just out of the ordinary, even though you're dealing with kind of semi-real world places a lot of the time. That was a big influence in terms of designing locations. Even at this early stage, I'm working on the first issue. Just the settings for things are heavily influenced by that sort of thinking.
Wasn't your guys' native home of Canada also an influence visually?
Yeah, it is, because we both grew up with forests in our backyards. Like we grew up in rural southern Ontario with the woods behind the house. So lots of walks and lots of playing and exploring. So that's I just like forests. That's a big part of what I do in Charles Christopher and in Isola. But the Dark Souls thing is less about visual designing, visual environments, and more. I mean, it is that also. I really like the designs for a lot of the places and characters in that game. But for me, it's more about storytelling and world building, because I've taken a lot of cues from those games in how they present characters in that world and how they present things to the player, which are extremely well thought out and very well written behind the scenes, but on the surface are complete blank slates. Like, I mean, you are presented with a lot of. Did you ever play Zelda? You must have played Zelda. So you know how you're walking through. Dark Souls is commonly referred to as being a very modern Legend of Zelda game because you're thrown into a world. They don't tell you which direction to go in. You just have to trial and error, find your way through here. If a place is too difficult for you, you just got to backtrack and find something else. There's a zillion, like there a whole bunch of characters in there who talk to you about things that they know a lot about, but you know nothing about. And you just feel like you're in this extremely rich world, and they never ever feel the need to hold your hand through it. It's just all this stuff that exists there, and like a long history of you know. Political struggles and creatures and and no one ever explains. I mean, you can read a lot of lore about it if you care to.
Right. But if you go through the story, you're picking it up as you go along.
Yeah, or you're picking up nothing. You're just going through and feeling like a part of this world, and it's something I really want to keep in mind while we're creating the world of Isola, and while we're just not explain things, just have things that are clearly important parts of the universe that you just take for granted, that are just there and no one talks about.
This is an important part of our collaboration, actually, which we can touch on quickly, is that I am always afraid that we're not explaining stuff, and I will write too much, and Karl will erase it. And that's in Gotham Academy too.
Yeah, we did. There's push and pull on Gotham
Becky
Academy.
and I write so much, and Karl just gets in there and says, "We don't need that. Whole panels. I don't need to draw that. Nobody needs to know."
Yeah, and it's not often about. Yeah, exactly. That's the key point. It's not about efficiency of storytelling. It's not like saying, it's not a show don't tell thing.
Right.
In that I'm cutting stuff because. We've seen it visually and we've got redundant dialogue. It's about just not explaining it. Just let it be what it is and let the reader absorb it as part of the subtext of the thing.
Right.
And I'm always trying to do more of that to like the point where it might be cryptic, but I don't think it's not like we're leaving out story elements.
Right.
It's just stuff that's there that's meaningful to the characters that you might not actually know anything about.
So Brenden, do you think that like that kind of not that it's like you guys are bickering about it all the time or something like that, but there's like a push-pull there. Like you have your instincts, he has his instincts. Do you feel like that, like having kind of two different perspectives on that in your collaboration allows for a better book to come out?
I specifically put more in than my instincts.
Because he's going to be erasing stuff?
Exactly. And it's more about having an editor. And having an editor that is synced up with the tone of the project that I agree with. And, we've worked with great editors at DC, but not everybody. I mean, we're almost in each other's heads.
Right.
So it's almost like I'm looking out for it on one extreme and he's looking out for it on the other extreme. And together we find this kind of perfect center, or perfect for us. I mean, I'll come up with more stuff than we need, and Karl will strip out the extraneous.
It's true. It's not one-sided by any means. I mean, because I trust that Brenden is going to. I ask all the time. I say, what is the element of this page that needs to be
conveyed?
Obvious? Yeah.
Yeah.
What information do we have to get across here?
And almost with every single page, we talk about that. Karl asked me about that. Yeah.
And once we have that, then everything. Then I'm like, cut this. We don't need the dialogue.
So
this would be one word. Not.
We rarely ever argue about this. It's usually a complete agreement.
Do you
we
think
argued about it more with Becky because her sensibilities are also different. So Gotham Academy works as well as it does, I think, because there's a three-way push-pull, and it becomes a whole other thing. It's not like Gotham Academy is not what Brenden and I would have done on our own. It's unique because the three of us worked so closely on it.
Well, and she also hasn't known you guys for 32 years, so maybe that's why part of the reason why.
It feels like we've known her for a long time, and we all trust each other.
And I mean, the stuff she likes is identical to the stuff we like in a lot. Well, I mean, except all the black metal. But we're so close in sensibility that the stuff that we push and pull about is like minute details usually,
Mhm.
or sometimes it's the handling of a character. Like she'll push for certain characters to be handled in a more proactive way than Karl or I would,
Mhm.
where we would let somebody be in the background or maybe not as active in the narrative, and Becky will push them into the foreground and make that character really do something important.
Mhm.
And I think it's great because it's almost like one of these moments where somebody's calling us on our shit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was interesting midway through the first arc of Gotham Academy. It became really clear where the influences were coming from.
Mhm.
Like what each of us would try to push forward. Becky was always pushing more of like shonen kind of like school friends stuff into the story, and I was weirdly like trying to get as much horror as I could. Now, I'm not really a horror guy, but I like.
Well, and I'm sure you probably weren't thinking like, I don't know, like The Descent or like hardcore
No,
horror.
I just that just really like creepy ghost stuff
Mhm.
and supernatural elements.
So this is a completely random aside, but like, did you guys see the TV show? There was like a TV series HBO did called "Show Me a Hero." Okay, it was it's David Simon, and David Simon was the guy who did The Wire. And I read this article that was the main star in Show Me a Hero is Oscar Isaac, Poe Dameron to the masses, and he was incredible in it. And David Simon is a very strong-willed man. He, I believe, used to work in the police, and he like then moved on to like write his series and everything like that.
Wasn't he a
He was a
journalist?
journalist.
Oh, he's a
in
journalist. That's it.
Baltimore
That
or
was it.
something,
Yeah.
right?
So he, anyways, and so he, after Show Me a Hero came out on DVD, he published a story on his site about how they were filming, and like Oscar Isaac basically said that I won't perform this scene the way that you're saying to, because like I know there's a better way we can do it. We don't have to be so obvious. And like I don't think David Simon was used to that, because like it's David Simon. He's kind of a badass. And it was interesting because like David Simon admitted in the piece that after going round and round, they ended up doing it Oscar Isaac's way, and he was like, it was better for it. Like, having like that kind of contrast and the collaboration, having that kind of freedom to like let other voices speak, allowed for Show Me a Hero to be as good of a series as it was. And I mean, you see that in comics too, and it's cool to hear like you two working together with Becky in that capacity. Not saying that you guys are having like hardcore standoffs over like single pages and things like that, but it is cool to hear that you guys have a push and pull that allows you to find the best comic out of the book you're making. So
I think with collaborations, it's kind of necessary.
Mhm.
I feel empty if I don't have it. There are times when I'm doing stuff for DC where I'm turning a script in and I'm not, they're assigning an artist to it, and it is an empty process that makes me very unhappy.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm happy to have the work and pay my rent and stuff, but that doesn't feel like the kind of artistic process of being involved in making comics that I want.
Right. I think that was one of the reasons why Gotham Academy felt so special when it was first announced, is because you guys were so tight, and because you could tell that this wasn't just like an arranged marriage, so to speak.
That was essentially us doing an Image comic, but for DC.
Right.
There was almost no editorial oversight.
Mm-hmm.
We were calling almost all the shots on that book
Mm-hmm.
and just doing what we wanted, sometimes to the detriment of the publishing schedule and the sort of psychological and emotional well-being of our poor editors. But it makes for better comics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what we all want.
Right,
Is
yeah.
better comics.
I know I do.
Yeah.
So last question I want to ask you guys. I already kind of talked to you guys a bit off the record about this, but I always find the Image Expo experience to be really fascinating. And I got to give you guys credit. You guys were excellent. Like, you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's kind of an interesting experience to go up there and stand in front of the lights and talk about your book and like, try to connect with this room full of people that you can't really even see. And I think you guys did a great job pitching it. But I'm curious, like from your end, from the burning lights coming down upon you, how was that experience? Was it exciting? What was it like?
It was it drained us.
Really?
Yeah, it was. I was fine. Like we were backstage in the green room waiting to present the thing for a while, like for most of the morning, because we went on last.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was fine up until really like 5 minutes before we went on, like when they mic'd us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Then it got real.
and then it got like, it wasn't that it got real. It was just that neither of us has a problem with speaking in public, but the scary part is that it's a thing we haven't talked about. Like we didn't. It's not like early on in a project, it's hard to summarize it and talk about it in a way that is snappy and that feels like you're gonna, like, especially when no one's heard of it. It's the first time anyone's gonna hear about it. You just want it to sound as appealing as possible and be the best it can be. It was I was a little bit nervous, and then but as soon as I walked on stage, I was fine.
Because I hugged you.
Because I got a big hug.
I think Brenden is built for the stage.
Yeah. No, but like once we were up there, we're just kind of riffing with each other like we've done a million times, and you can't see anything. Like you can't see anything. You can't see anything in the audience, so it's kind of like talking to like a black room. Like there's nothing. We're just talking to each other, basically.
I always think one of the interesting things about like when you guys are launching a book is like, this book isn't coming for a while now. I mean, it's not like going to be happening, like it's not coming out July or something like that. So it's really hard to say what the book's going to be to, like, if you guys keep doing press interviews and things like that, like to schmoes like me, like how do you keep saying the same stuff in interesting ways? And it's got to be interesting to come up there and try to like kind of pitch the world for the first time and summarize it in a way that's going to be interesting without being like, we're going to wander around this world as we get towards the end and like, the tiger and all this stuff like that.
We actually talked about this beforehand. Like how deeply do we want to get into character and story here?
Right.
And the answer is like, we're so far off. And I should say like, we're not that far off because we can't produce because Karl's not going to draw it in time.
Right.
It's more of a release strategy. There's so much going on, and we will have Isola product out for everyone to read and see by December.
Nice.
In the back of Motor Crush, you'll be able to start reading Isola. So it's going to happen, and the rollout's going to be really fun. But that said, I mean, even December is a bunch of months off. So we just thought it was going to be nicer to introduce people to us and remind people of what we do together and why that is important to us, and maybe like that gives you confidence in following us on this journey as we prepare to release this book, as we prepare to introduce you to further aspects of the story, the concept, the characters. So we just wanted to get out there and talk about how long we've known each other and how much we love working together and how much passion we're going to bring to this thing. This means everything to us. Like not just in that, we need this to succeed so that Karl can pay his mortgage and feed his kids and I can pay my rent and stuff. It means everything to us artistically and as friends and as two people who've been working together for a couple of decades. It's really important that this happen and really important that it reflect us in every possible way.
Yeah. Well, I'm very excited to read it. Thank you guys so much for chatting with me. And
Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to the build up to Isola.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel from Sketch.com. You can find this week's guests, Brenden Fletcher and Karl Kerschl, on Twitter at Brenden Fletcher and at Karl Kerschl, and their work in the upcoming Isola at Image Comics. You can find more sketch content at Sketched. That's SKTCHD.com. Follow us on Twitter at SketchComic. Like us on Facebook at /Sketched. And if you're listening on iTunes, give us a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.